AI never sleeps, and this week has been absolutely insane. We have a new AI that can generate any video game with just a prompt or image, and you can actually play and interact with it. We have a new AI model which takes an image and any audio and it would lip sync the face to the audio. And this is the best one I've seen yet. We have another AI that can generate multiple views of a character, and this is so useful for creating 3D models and textures. We have a new open source video generator, and this one crushes everything, including commercial models like Kling or Sora. We have another AI that can take in one image and turn it into a 3D world, which you can explore around, and again, this is the best quality one I've seen yet. Google releases an AI that can predict weather and extreme events with extremely high accuracy, and a lot more, so let's jump right in. First up, this tool is already pretty insane. It's called Genie 2 by Google DeepMind, and this can generate any playable 3D video game in real time. Based on only a prompt or an input image, it will generate a 3D interactive environment, and this can respond to actions from the user, as you can see in this example, to move the character around this 3D environment. Now, I've covered a few similar tools before, which can also generate video games, like Google's Game Engine, which simulates a playable version of Doom, or Microsoft's Diamond, which simulates Counter-Strike, and more recently, another one called The Matrix, which can also generate any playable video game in real time. However, this new one, Genie 2, is just much better quality and more consistent, and you can interact with this virtual world a lot more. And I think this will definitely be the future of video games, where maybe we won't have games that are pre-programmed or pre-designed, but instead the user would simply enter a prompt and the AI would generate something on the fly for the user to play. And Genie 2 has several features that make it better than all the previous tools that I mentioned. First of all, it has what they call long horizon memory. So it remembers parts of the world that are no longer in view. So for example, notice the walls on the left at the beginning of this video. Note that the wall disappears as the character enters this really big room, but as soon as he turns left again, that wall reappears, which proves that it kind of has some spatial memory of all the objects in this 3D world. Here's another example where you're starting with a view of the pyramids as your start frame, but as you move the camera to a top-down view and then you move it back to a normal view, it still remembers that there were pyramids in the background and regenerates those in the video. Now it says here that it can generate a pretty consistent video for up to a minute long. Now I did feature another tool called The Matrix, and this one can actually generate an infinitely long video. It can keep going and going and going, whereas for Genie 2 it seems like the maximum limit right now is just a minute. Anyways, with this tool, you can also generate video games in different perspectives. So for example, from first person to isometric or third person driving videos, as you can see in these examples. So this opens up a lot of creative possibilities. And the thing that I'm most impressed with is that it can also create objects that are interactive. So for example, here when the user jumps into the balloon, it knows to create this effect of popping the balloon. Or here, if the user walks into this door, it knows to open the door. And then in this example, when the user shoots the barrel of explosives, it knows to make it explode. So this is way more interactive than all the other video game simulators that we've seen so far. Plus, it can even generate other characters which you can interact with. So in this video on the left, you can see that it has generated an additional character on the left. And then in this middle generation, note that it has generated this person walking across the scene. And then in this last generation, it has generated this character, which seems to be like a boss or something, and your goal is to destroy it. And of course, with this model, it can also generate real-world effects. So for example, it can generate these splashes and ripples in water. Plus, it can generate smoke effects, as you can see in these two examples. Plus, it can also generate gravity. So you can see when this horse jumps, it goes back to the ground. When this car drives off the cliff, it indeed falls down to the ground. It also understands lighting very well. So as you can see in these examples, if the dude is holding a torch, then it also simulates the light dynamics of a torch. If the dude is holding a flashlight, you can see that the light does illuminate some of the trees in this forest as he points the light around. Here's an example showing its understanding of reflections. So in this video on the left, you can see that the puddles also reflect the city lights very accurately as you move around the scene. And then for this video on the right, you can see that the mirror on the right wall is also reflecting the room pretty accurately as you move around. It's now so easy to prototype and create your own video game with just a single concept image. So let's say you've created this image. Well, you can easily just plug it into this AI and it would create an interactive video game for you based on this image. Now, here's a really simple explanation on the architecture behind this. So you can either enter in a prompt or an image. If you enter a prompt, it would actually use Google's image generator called Imagen 3 to generate your initial image. And then it would plug this image through an encoder and then into this diffusion model. Now, depending on what actions the user takes or what keys the user presses, it would then slightly alter that frame. And then after you decode this is basically the next frame that you'll see in the generation. And so this process keeps going as you press different keys on the keyboard, and then the generated video will change accordingly. One thing to note is that the videos I showed you were generated by an undistilled base model. So this is a larger model, and this is not in real time. You can still interact with this AI in real time using a smaller distilled version, but note that the quality of the output would be lower. Anyways, this is a huge leap forward compared to the other tools I featured before, which mostly can generate one game, whereas this can generate anything with just a prompt or image. And although the quality right now is still not great, this is the worst it's gonna get. I think within a year or two, we're gonna get like AAA quality video games that can be generated with AI on the fly. Anyways, I'll link to this page in the description below so you can read further. Next up, this free and open source AI is also very useful. It can take a prompt or an image and generate multiple views of a character. So it's called Multi-View Adapter, or MV Adapter for short. And if you've been playing around with Stable Diffusion or Flux, you could kind of generate consistent characters with tools like ControlNet or other plugins, but it's still not really consistent. It's really hard to generate multiple views of a character consistently, especially if the character has a lot of details. But with this tool, you can see that all the images are actually very consistent. And the nice thing about this is a plugin. It's not like a separate base model. So you can actually plug this into any Stable Diffusion model, whether it's anime or 3D or watercolor or any other style, and it would still be able to consistently generate multiple views of a character. So for example, at the top here, if you're using this Animagen XL model, which is specialized for generating anime, then it can generate anime characters like this. Or if you're using this 3D render style LoRa, then it's able to generate these 3D looking characters. Or let's say if you're using this Lego Brickheads model, then it's able to generate multiple views of characters like this. So this is a super versatile plugin. And by the way, not only can you enter a prompt, but you can also just input an image, and it would also generate multiple views of the character in the image, as you can see here. And this is really tricky, by the way, especially if you need to generate the back of the character. It's really hard to guess what that would look like based on just one image. But for the most part, you can see that especially for the generation of the back of the character, this AI is able to get everything very accurately. Now, instead of just uploading a full image of something, You can also just sketch the rough outline of whatever character you want to create, and then using ControlNet and MV Adapter, you can also create multiple views of a character based on a simple sketch. This is such a powerful tool. Now, of course, with these images of multiple views of a character, you can easily plug these into any modeling tools to create 3D models like this. Here are some additional examples. And note how the 3D model preserves all the details of the original image that you've uploaded. So this is a super versatile and powerful tool. There are additional demos of 3D models that you can play around with, and I mean, look how detailed these generations are. This is very impressive. I mean, look at the detail of this transformer. This is super impressive. The awesome thing is, the models are already out, so you can just go to their GitHub repo, and if you scroll to the middle somewhere, it contains all the instructions on how to install this and use it locally on your computer. So they have a Gradio interface like this, which is pretty self-explanatory. You just enter in a prompt and then click run, and it would generate multiple views of a character. Here's another example of an anime character. Here's yet another example, and another example. They even have a comfy UI integration, so it's pretty easy to add this to an existing workflow you might have. Anyways, the GitHub and the paper links are all up here, so I'll link to this main page in the description below for you to read further. In other news, we have a new open source video model, and this is the best one I've seen yet. I think this is even better than commercial models like Sora or Kling. So this is called Hunyuan Video by Tencent, and the quality is simply amazing. I mean, this easily beats all other open source video generators and even closed source models. Note how consistent everything is and how detailed and sharp the entire scene is. This is really high quality. It even understands complex sequences. For example, here, if you prompted it with the cat walks down the stairs and eats a burger, this is the result. And everything, as you can see, looks super realistic. You can also cut from one scene to the next, as you can see in this example. This is just one generation, but you can specify in the prompt for it to cut to another scene, like halfway in the video. And yes, this even works for higher action scenes and scenarios that it has never seen before in its training data. For example, like this panda riding a bicycle in the city. Notice how everything is extremely detailed and the motions are very smooth. Everything is very consistent. Here's another high action scene of a cat riding a dinosaur with squirrels dancing around. And you can see even with so much movement, so many characters and people walking around in the background, it's able to generate this really consistently. And this is definitely on par or better than the best video generators we've seen so far. And of course, it can generate incredibly cinematic videos like this. I mean, this looks like a scene straight from a movie. It's really hard to tell that this was AI generated. Here's another example of scene transitions. So in the prompt, you can see first it's generating this wide shot of a caravan of camels in golden dunes, and then next it's cutting to this close-up shot. And this AI model is able to handle it pretty seamlessly. And here's the crazy part. Not only does it do text to video, but you can also upload some audio, and using an input image, it would lip sync the audio to that person's face, as you can see in these demonstrations. So you can see the input images are at the top here, and if you add in some audio, this is what you get. How insane is that? Not only does it make his face move, but it also moves his entire body very fluidly. Plus, it even moves the background. So you can see if I play it like over here, someone is walking across the scene in the background. Here's another example. Again, a super fluid video. You can see that it has detected because she is at the beach. I'm guessing it's adding some wind, so her hair is blowing in the wind, plus it's also animating the waves. She's singing, and her body is moving accordingly. this is super fluid and realistic. Here's another example.
我都1年没吃苹果了，到超市偷了一袋苹果，大家觉得这要不要道歉？你1年没吃苹果，你就能偷苹果啦？
I have to say, out of all the AI tools I've reviewed so far that animate people and get them to talk, this is by far the most realistic one I've seen yet. If you've been following my channel, you might have seen a recent video about this other tool called Echo Mimic, which does pretty much the same thing, but forget about Echo Mimic. I mean, this Hunyuan video just crushes everything. And we're not even done yet. Not only does it do like lip sync to an input audio, but it can also do video to video. So here's an example of an input image and then an input video, and it knows to map the motions of this input video onto the image. Here's another example where the input image is a man and then the input video is this woman, and note how it's animating the man based on the movements of the woman. By the way, this is exactly the function of another tool called Live Portrait, which I featured like 4 months ago, and Live Portrait is already pretty impressive, but I think this new one from Tencent might be even better. Here's another example of video to video in action. Note that you don't need to just upload a real video of someone moving. You can also just upload a pose skeleton video like this. And also with an input image, it will animate that image based on the movements of the pose video. Here's another example using a pose video as the driving video. And again, note that there are other tools that do this as well, such as Mimic Motion, but this new Hunyuan model is the best quality and most consistent one I've seen yet. And if you're wondering if this works for anime, the answer is yes. So here's an example, and note how consistent everything is. There are pretty much no distortions on her face or limbs. Her movements match the pose video perfectly. This is just a really smooth and consistent video. Now, as I mentioned, this is completely open source, which is kind of ridiculous. I can't believe they're actually offering this to us for free to run locally. I mean, they could easily just make this closed source and make a lot of money from this. But anyways, here's their GitHub page, and it already includes all the links to the model weights. There's also a playground you can try out or a replicate space for you to test this out. And on their to-do list, it says they are going to release a Gradio interface plus integration for Comfy UI, which is just fantastic. However, before you get too excited, here are the requirements. If you want to generate a 720 by 1280 video, note that you do need at least 60 gigabytes of VRAM, which I assume most of you do not have. And even with a lower resolution of 544 by 960, that still requires 45 gigabytes of VRAM. In fact, they recommend 80 gigabytes of VRAM for better generation quality. So unfortunately, you won't be able to run this on pretty much all consumer-grade GPUs. However, since this is open source, I'm hoping that the open source community will eventually fine-tune a quantized version that works well with lower-end GPUs as well. But if you do miraculously have this much VRAM lying around, then, well, here are all the instructions on how to download and run this locally. If you don't, for now, there's a replicate space where you can test this out. Now, note that each generation costs around 70 cents. But I mean, this is still way cheaper compared to commercial models like Runway. Anyways, it's really impressive that open source has finally caught up or even beat commercial models. This is as good or even better than some of the best closed source models out there. Anyways, I will definitely do a full review video on this and compare its generations with other top video models. So stay tuned for that. Thanks to Invideo AI for sponsoring this video. Invideo AI is a powerful video creation tool that uses AI to bring your ideas to life. It enables you to express your ideas in the form of stunning videos, in the most seamless and intuitive way possible, regardless of your skill level in video editing. Whether you want to make a short film, create YouTube videos, or TikTok shorts, Invideo is the ultimate creative partner. Simply type in a prompt or select a workflow, and the AI will generate a video for you in minutes. You can even edit whatever you like using simple prompts like add my voice. Unlike traditional video tools with steep learning curves that only do parts of your video creation process, Invideo is the creative partner that removes all friction. It makes the process intuitive and fluid, letting users focus entirely on their vision and idea. Whether you're a marketer, social media influencer, or storyteller, Invideo is the perfect tool to help you create and customize videos. You can try Invideo AI for free, but if you want to use their generative abilities, their generative plan starts at $96 per month, and this gives you the most bang for the buck. Save hundreds of dollars that you would otherwise spend on editing, animating, or other production costs. If you're already an Invideo user, you can simply go to the add-on section and buy generative seconds as well. In other news, we have another AI which can take an input image and any audio, and it would lip sync the audio to the image. This tool is called Float, and let me just show you a few demos right now.
But you can imagine I have a lot of questions. So I'd love to begin with you firstly, just because I read that you started out in advertising and now you run a wellness business.
Sometimes it can feel like a tightening in your chest or a weight on your shoulders.
Let's say you don't want to see this person again. I still think that you should follow up with them. Just ghosting somebody after you guys had a good time together is not the nicest thing to do. You want to text that person and let her know that you're still thinking about her, even
if you plan to go for a run and you don't have enough time to do a full run, do part of a run. If you plan to go to the gym today, but you don't have the full hour that you normally work out.
Now, I featured similar tools on my channel before, such as Hello, where you can also input an image and any audio and it would lip sync the face to the audio. But I think this new one, called Float, is slightly better quality. And the cool thing is, you can even specify the emotion of the person. So here's an example where if you specify for the person to be happy or sad or surprised, here's what you get.
When I was a kid, I feel like you heard the term, don't cry. You don't need to cry. Crying is the most beautiful thing you can do. I encourage people to cry. I cry all the time, and I think it's the most healthy expression of how you're feeling, and I sometimes wish I just could have been told, you can cry.
You can even adjust the intensity of the emotion. So for example, here you can see the emotion scale is 0. You can bump up the expressiveness slightly and set the scale to 1, or you can make it even more expressive and set the scale to 2. And not only does it take in an input audio, but you can also upload a driving video of a person talking, and it would map their movements onto your input image. So here's an example of that, where you can upload an image of Messi and then upload another video of someone talking, and it would map his motions onto Messi. Note that this is exactly what another tool called Live Portrait does as well, and actually Live Portrait is pretty good already. In fact, if you haven't heard of Live Portrait before, I highly recommend you watch this video where I do a tutorial on Live Portrait. But anyways, Float is another tool you can use to animate an image of a face. So pretty insane times we live in right now. There are just so many tools being released which can do so many things, from creating videos, to manipulating videos, to making people move and dance and talk. It's just a crazy time to be alive. Anyways, if you scroll up to the top of the site, they do say that they will release the code soon. So stay tuned for that. For now, I'm going to link to this page in the description below. Next up, this AI is super useful. It's called GenCast by Google DeepMind, and this is an AI model that predicts extreme weather with very high accuracy. Now, in contrast to other weather prediction systems that are usually deterministic, in other words, they just provide one best estimate of future weather, this new GenCast AI model actually gives you a combination of 50 or more predictions, each representing a possible weather trajectory. So, for example, if you task it with a 7-day forecast of a typhoon, note that because this is going to be 7 days into the future, there's a lot more uncertainty. So GenCast actually gives you a ton of different possible scenarios of where or how the typhoon would move over these 7 days. But as the forecast gets closer and closer, then you can see these possibilities get narrower and more accurate. Now, the backbone behind GenCast is a diffusion model, which is a term you should be familiar with if you've been following my channel. So this is the same type of model that's used to generate images, videos, and audio. Now, for GenCast, this diffusion model was basically trained on 4 decades of historical weather data from this ERA5 archive. And this data includes things like temperature, wind speed, and pressure at various altitudes. So after training this diffusion model on 4 decades of this data, it knows how to pretty accurately predict weather and extreme conditions. And note that GenCast predicts better forecasts of both day-to-day weather as well as extreme events. So if you compare GenCast, which is the line in blue, and then the gray line is the top operational system right now, which is called ENS. Note that GenCast is better at predicting extreme events in all instances. In other words, the blue line has a higher value and is therefore better than the gray line. And not only is this more accurate, but it also takes less compute. So here it says it takes a single Google Cloud TPU just minutes to produce one 15-day forecast, whereas current top methods takes hours on a supercomputer with tens of thousands of processors. So this is definitely a game changer for weather prediction. It can help improve decision-making in various areas such as disaster response and food security. And best of all, they've made this open source, so you can actually download the code and weights here. So if you click on this link, it takes you to the GitHub repo, which contains all the instructions on how to download and use this locally. Anyways, I'll link to this main page in the description below for you to read further. In other news, if you haven't heard, Fei-Fei Li, who is often considered the godmother of AI, has a startup called WorldLabs. And this week, they just revealed their first major project. This is an AI that can transform any object into an explorable, interactive 3D environment, and you can navigate around this in real time. And I must say, this is one of the most detailed and highest quality 3D worlds that I've seen generated with a single image. Now, there are a ton of other tools that can also take an image and generate a 3D scene from it, but those are generally more incoherent with a lot of flaws. But this one is surprisingly smooth and detailed, as you can see from these examples. So here's another example where you can just input one image and it would create a 3D world where the user can interact with the environment in real time and navigate around this environment using these controls. Again, note how smooth everything is. In fact, on this page, which I'll link to in the description below, you can actually explore some of the 3D worlds yourself. So, for example, right now I am swiping around the scene, and note that for the most part, this is very, very consistent. Now, this is obviously the main image, but if I drag it all the way to the back, it even kind of guesses what the scene at the back would look like, and it generates something like this. Very impressive. Here's another example. So this is quite a complicated scene with a lot of elements. It's quite an abstract scene, but it's able to generate everything very smoothly and consistently. And again, if I drag this to the back, it can kind of guess what the back of this scene would look like, even though it does not have this data from the one input image, right? So this is very, very impressive. And if I click and hold, I can actually zoom in. So overall, very smooth and impressive. Here's another scene. This is a more realistic photo, and as I move around, again, everything is just very smooth and consistent. And if I drag this 180 degrees, it fills in the blanks. It predicts that, all right, the back of the room might look like this. Here's another example of a nice scene from a hike. And again, it kind of knows how to fill in the blanks, even though, this data was not available from that one image. Now, this AI not only creates a 3D world where you can move around, it also features real-time camera effects like depth of field. So for example, here we have a depth of field slider, and if this is your input image, you can actually slide the slider to shift the focus of the lens nearer or farther, as you can see in this example. Here's another example where not only can I move around, but I can also shift the focus of the lens. So here is a near focus where the closest balls are in focus. And then as I shift this farther, note that the next row of balls are now in focus, and then on and on. So this is actually a really powerful effect for photography and image editing. It can also simulate a dolly zoom effect. So let me show you what this does. So let's say you have this one input image. Let me just slide this from wide. So this is basically simulating what is called a dolly zoom effect in photography. How cool is that? All right, here's another example. Let's say your input image is this. So I'm going to slide this dolly effect slider so you can see what it does. This is a really cool effect you can apply to videos, especially for like B-roll scenes. And because this is a 3D world, that means you can also create a depth map from this world, as you can see here. Or here's another example. If this is the 3D world, here's what the depth map would look like. Plus, you can even interact with these 3D worlds using some interactive lighting effects. So for example, for the sonar effect, if I press anywhere on the world, note that it emits this sonar-like pulse throughout this scene. Very impressive. And then let's see what spotlight does. All right, so spotlight is like shining a flashlight, illuminating a certain area of the scene. Very impressive. And then ripple, let's see what that does. It basically creates a ripple in the scene. Anyways, these examples are just an early preview of what this tool can do. They're still building out this AI model, and if you want to get access to this or future releases, you can join their waitlist. Unfortunately, for now, this is not something you can use right away. Anyways, this is kind of like Google's Genie 2, which I featured at the beginning of this video, which can create a 3D world from just a prompt, and you can interact with this like a video game. And this AI by WorldLabs is actually very, very similar, and this is super useful for areas like games and films and virtual reality. I think in the future, we just need to prompt an AI or feed it an image, and we could immerse ourselves in an entire 3D world, which it has generated on the fly. Anyways, I'll link to this main page in the description below for you to read further. Next up, for those of you who want to generate anime videos, this is a game changer. Now, I've tested out various AI video generators on anime, and most of them couldn't really generate anime or 2D scenes very well. They tend to either turn that person into 3D or eventually morph the character into a real person. Or if you try to get the anime character to talk or move, then it just looks very uncanny. Well, finally, Minimax has released a new image-to-video model called i2v01 Live, and this is specialized for generating 2D videos. And here are some examples of this live model in action. As you can see, it works really well for like 2D or even Disney Pixar style animations. And this is really simple to use. All you have to do is log in to Hunyuan or Minimax if you haven't already, and then in this image to video tab, you can simply upload an image as your start frame. So I'm going to use this image as the start frame, and then the final step is over here. You need to select this one, i2v01 Live, which is specialized for 2D or non-realistic images. Now you can also enter in a prompt here to guide it further, but I'm just gonna leave it blank and click generate. And let's see what that gives us. Alright, and this is what we got. And I must say, this is really good. There are still some minor flaws with it, but this is indeed the best, like 2D or non-realistic video generator I've come across. Very impressive. And then for your comparison, here's the live model compared with the original image to video model using the same input image. And as you can see, in most cases, this new live model is a lot better for animated or non-realistic images. Also this week, Sam Altman tweeted this. Starting tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific, we are doing 12 days of OpenAI. Each weekday, we will have a live stream with a launch or demo, some big ones and some stocking stuffers. We've got some great stuff to share. Hope you enjoy. Merry Christmas. So how exciting. It seems like for the next 12 weekdays, we're gonna get a launch or demo for each day. And sure enough, the day after this was tweeted, OpenAI releases not one, not two, but 3 bangers. ChatGPT Pro, O1 and O1 Pro. Now this is already a mouthful, so let's go over each one. First of all, ChatGPT Pro is a new subscription plan that's priced at $200 per month, which is 10 times more than the existing ChatGPT Plus plan. However, that being said, it does include unlimited access to their smartest models, including GPT-4o, the advanced voice mode, and O1 and O1 Pro, which we'll talk about right now. So back in September, OpenAI released this O1 preview model, and this was their smartest model. This has deep thinking and it can solve PhD level questions. Now back in September, they've only released the O1 preview version. We could not actually access the O1 version. But finally this week, they've released the full O1 version, but not only that, they've also released an even smarter version called O1 Pro. And both the O1 and O1 Pro, as you can see from these charts, they seem to perform even better on challenging benchmarks across math, science, and coding. Now, to access both the O1 and O1 Pro models, you do need to have a paid subscription. But to be honest, for most of us, I don't actually think the O1 models are necessary. Keep in mind, this is for like super technical or super complex PhD level questions. So for day-to-day Q&A, you won't actually need to use the O1 models. But for more technical folks like mathematicians or lawyers, developers, scientists, this might be a game changer. Anyways, even though these benchmarks are impressive, Google has also quietly released a new model this week, which beats everything else apparently. So if you go to this LM Arena, this is where users can blind test different chatbots. So really quickly, here's how it works. You are given 2 models and you don't know which one is which, and then you can enter in any prompts and both models will give you a response based on your prompt, and you need to vote on which model you prefer. And then after tens of thousands of votes, you can see the rankings here on which models were preferred most of the time. Now, just today, at the time of this recording, on December 6th, Google quietly released this new model, Gemini Experimental 1206. And keep in mind, they've already released like 2 other models in the span of a few weeks. They've released one on November 14th and 21st. And now this new model they released, this has an overall arena score of 1379, which beats OpenAI's best model, ChatGPT 4o. So now Google apparently is ranked number 1 on this chatbot arena. And you can actually try this new Gemini model out right now. So you just need to go to Google's AI Studio, which I'll link to in the description below. And here's where you can enter in a prompt. Here's where you can select the model. So if you scroll all the way down, note that we have this new Gemini Experimental 1206 model over here. So the race is heating up. I assume as OpenAI releases new things in the coming 12 days, other competitors like Google or maybe even Anthropic are also going to release things to try to outcompete OpenAI. In other news, Amazon has recently introduced its new series of AI models called Nova. Now, Amazon has been quite low-key in this AI space. They are a major investor in Anthropic, which has obviously created one of the best models out there, Claude, but Amazon themselves haven't actually built any quote-unquote state-of-the-art models that we know of today. Well, finally, they've released this Nova family, And this is actually quite close to the quality of GPT and Claude. Now, this family consists of 4 main models. There's the Nova Micro model, which is a text-only model optimized for speed and cost. And then there's the Nova Lite, which is a multimodal model. In other words, it can process images, videos, as well as text. And then we have the Nova Pro model, which is more expensive but more performant. And again, this is multimodal, so it can take in text, image, and video. And then they also have a Nova Premier model, which is coming soon. If I had to guess, this is probably for more complex reasoning tasks. Now, they've just released Nova this week, so I'm trying to see how good this actually is. And if I inspect some third-party leaderboards like LM Arena, I don't actually see Nova listed anywhere here yet. However, for this other independent evaluator called Artificial Analysis, they also have an LLM leaderboard, and I do see Nova Pro down here. So it's not too good. I mean, it's outcompeted by Claude and Qwen and Gemini, and of course the O1 models, but it's still within like the top 10, I would say. And note that they also have a Nova Canvas model, which is used for image generation, and a Nova Real model, which is used for video generation. However, the images and videos that it is able to create are not great. They're still noticeably worse than the best image and video models out there, so there's not much worth sharing at this point. Anyways, that sums up the highlights in AI this week. Let me know what you think of all of this and which tool are you most looking forward to trying out. As always, I will be on the lookout for the top AI news and tools to share with you. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Also, there's just so much happening in the world of AI every week. I can't possibly cover everything on my YouTube channel. So to really stay up to date with all that's going on in AI, be sure to subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. The link to that will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.